Hello everyone and welcome to The Round So Far, brought to you by Amy. It's great to have your company. My name is Nat Edwards, filling in for Riley Beveridge, and joining me is Kane Corns. Kane, welcome to you.
Thanks, Nat. Great to be here.
Of course, Riley having a well-deserved weekend off. Let's get straight into it though, Kane, because there is only one place we can start this show, and that is at Metricon Stadium. Noah Anderson has written himself into footy folklore. He was the hero, kicking a goal after the siren as the Suns sank the Tigers by 2 points, and this was a thriller.
How about this? Sam Day takes the mark in the forward pocket. You don't actually see it because the camera's cut away with it, but Anderson is in the right place at the right time, and from the moment he took that mark, he knew this kick was going to be after the siren. And how's the composure of him? It's a footballer's dream to be able to do that. That moment right there is the reason that you play football. And to come from 40 points down throughout this game and 28 points at three-quarter time, that is a moment that young man and his teammates will never, ever forget. And on the back of a significant week for that man, Stewie Dew, with that contract extension, just unbelievable scenes.
I absolutely love the scenes at Metricon Stadium. It was such a thrilling game. That last quarter, though, you went into it thinking that the Tigers had the job done, but they were a little bit untidy in this final term, especially in the last 10 minutes or so, and undisciplined. It was Sam Day who got it rolling there. And then this one, Castagna had the chance to put the game beyond doubt. A smother there from Charlie Ballard.
Undisciplined, I guess, Lairising a little bit there with Castagna, who his goal-kicking routine is all at sea. And then you mentioned undisciplined. They were every bit undisciplined. This is a row mark there and a 50-metre penalty on the back of that. He went down and kicked a goal. And most of the opportunities they had came from Richmond errors, either free kicks against or undisciplined play that you wouldn't usually expect from Richmond, like letting the ball go over the back here, and Mabior Chol goes in and kicks his third goal with 1 minute and 15 on the clock. Just mistakes that you wouldn't usually expect from Richmond. So Damien Hardwick would be really disappointed with that performance, because throughout stages they had this game completely in their control. The second quarter they were dominant from centre bounce. The game was played in their half. They had their run going off half back, and I was concerned for Gold Coast at one point of how significant this loss was going to be. So credit to them for hanging in there, but Richmond have a fair few problems.
Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, they've now lost 3 really tight games. Obviously the Suns, but the Cats in round 15, round 11 against the Swans, those all under a goal. Is that a concern there, losing those tight games?
Yeah, it is, because it points to a lack of leadership on the ground, and players that would usually be able to control those scenarios and in-game situations that they've done so well. And then the injuries as well, which I know you're going to get to, but they've got significant issues with their injury list. 1,005 games coming into this game, and then Tom Lynch goes out early, just lasted 5 minutes. His second hamstring injury now doesn't seem to be too serious, but it's never a one-week hammy, particularly after you've already done one at stages throughout this year. We know Dustin Martin is missing, Vlosten is missing, Lambert's had his problems, as have others, and you're telling me Nankervis might be in trouble as well.
Yes, so Toby Nankervis, a PCL injury, I believe, and Ivan Soldo went off with a broken thumb, so it leaves them a little bit down in the ruck stocks. They play North Melbourne next weekend, but yeah, obviously a concern. It was a costly loss in the end for Richmond. To Marvel Stadium now on Saturday night. Now the Dockers, they haven't played finals since 2015, but they look certain to do so this year, beating the Saints by 41 points, and it was the third quarter surge that got the job done against the Saints. 7 goals for Kane to 2 goals 2 in that third term.
11 scoring shots from 14 entries. I mean, they just flicked a switch. I mean, because they were in a bit of trouble at half-time. They were getting smashed out of the centre bounce 10-2 at half-time. Seb Ross was dominant out of there. They readjusted the personnel. Rory Lobb went in there to jump against Ryder, and they were methodical with their ball use, as you're seeing there. Collier to Fife, who kicked 3 goals. Welcome back, Fifey. But also their ability to turn the footy in their front half over and score from that, as we're seeing there. So they just dropped the hammer on St Kilda. They lifted the intensity and the pressure. Their small forwards play a selfless role. They buy into it, the defensive aspects of the game, and then they finish. But I was there, I saw it live, and could not have been any more impressed from what I saw from Fremantle in the second half tonight.
I was listening to an interview with Lachie Schultz a while back, and he was talking about how Fremantle wanted to be the best forward pressure side in the competition. They were fantastic tonight in that department with 13 tackles inside 50.
Well, this is just awesome. I mean, this is how you win premierships, on the back of the pressure here. And St Kilda couldn't cope. The amount of times they overused the ball by hand, and we're seeing that one with Gresham, like, you just good players making silly mistakes, but that's because of the pressure that was confronting them. And then it was this third quarter where they even took it to a bigger gear, if you like. It was all of them. So Sarong went forward. He's providing the pressure there. Brayshaw is the one that always leads from the front, another 10 tackles tonight. Aisha's doing it, and you'll see Brayshaw, multiple efforts here. Turn it over in your front half, go back and score, and St Kilda could not cope. The amount of errors that they made on the back of this. So that's finals winning football, and it was a finals-like performance from a side who traditionally has struggled a little bit away from home against a reasonable opponent in St Kilda. They adjusted at half-time, and look, they're third on the ladder now, and how important is a home final going to be for them?
Very, very important indeed. I want to talk about the Saints, though, because they were 8-3. They've now lost 4 of their last 5. Where has it all gone wrong for them, do you think?
Well, we said on this show with Riley 3-4 weeks ago that they were vulnerable inside of the 8, and that's exactly what has eventuated, really. Their forward structure looked all at sea. Like, they started Marshall forward with King and Membry, but, King, Max is struggling a little bit with his body positioning and impact the game. Ryder, I don't think he took a mark tonight, and Membry plays more of that floating role. So if it wasn't coming out of the centre bounce, they struggle to have an impact on the game. I just don't think they're good enough, and you saw the lack of polish and the turnovers that they made tonight. So they're not going to play finals. They're not worthy of a finals team, and that performance solidified that tonight.
To the MCG now, where Collingwood has survived a scare against an inspired North Melbourne. 7 points the win in the end, and they had to do it the hard way. The Pies, they came back from 28 points down in the third term to overrun the Brews. That's 7 straight wins now for the Pies.
Yes, they kicked 5 in the last quarter, and they had to. But you win 7 games in a row, right? Like, it's tough to do, and they're largely a young side. Dacos brothers combining there, and the minute Nick kicked that one, Josh was saluting that it came off his boot. So this was good. And then their big players came to play late. Darcy Cameron there, he took a contested mark. He's been awesome. He kicked 3. And, we're going to see still side bottom here. He was quiet in the first half, but once again, his class shone through late in this game, and their leaders got it done after being beaten up, really. I mean, that's a nice way to put it, from the centre bounce. And Davies Uniacke will get to with his 8 centre bounce clearances. But for them to be able to respond like that as a young group and win 7 in a row, it's one where you just take it and move on pretty quickly, and you don't dissect it too much. You just, appreciate the fact that you put together a pretty strong, 7 to 8 weeks of footy. One
of the things we often see from a young, inexperienced side is they often lose those tight ones, but the Pies are the complete opposite of that, which actually shows a little bit of maturity, doesn't it? You see their close wins here this season. I mean, they could have easily gone the other way, but it does show that their on-field leaders are standing up.
Absolutely. So Pendlebury goes on ball. Howe's really solid behind the ball, and he was solid again tonight, both physically and just putting himself in the right position. Taylor Adams has an impact on the game. Maynard is now a really strong leader of that football club. So the thing that they've done really well is they've reset the playing squad, not rebuilt it, by keeping those experienced players. Mason Cox is 30 plus, and he's still having an impact. And then you get the young ones coming through. So I've loved what they've done. They play attractive football, and when the game's on the line, they've been good enough to get over the line in those close games, and they're in a really good spot.
You have to feel for North Melbourne fans. They didn't get the win, but there were so many positives, and I cannot talk more highly of Luke Davies-Uniacke, because he is an absolute star. 33 touches, 12 clearances, 11 tackles and 2 goal assists. Yep. He was incredible.
Yeah, he was. He's everything you want of a midfielder. So big, powerful, strong midfielder. There's Ben Mackay. He was awesome as well after being thrown all over the place in the last fortnight. They tried him forward. That was a mistake. So he was back to his natural habitat, and you could see that he relished that. But Davies-Uniacke out of the middle of the ground took it to pretty experienced players today. And Nick Larkey, who's been battling for the most part of this year, kicked 5 goals and stood up, and at times against a really good opponent in Jeremy Howe. So there were 3 standout performances, and for a side that lost, you wouldn't be surprised to see them getting the 3, 2 and 1 votes on Brownlow medal night.
Well, the Roos were really ahead in so many key areas of the game, just unable to hold on there in the end. So for Roos coach David Noble, it was a really, really tough week. It's been a tough season. This is what he had to say after the game about his future in the top job.
I'm clear that if the review keeps moving forward, I've got no queries around where I think the drive that I've spoken to the board about and the direction that we need to take. I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in the group that we've got. We're resolute on where the direction needs to go. You know, if there's feedback for me as an individual to get better, I'm all for improving, you know, as a coach. But I think having been around the block, I think I've got a clear idea as to what needs to happen, and that's what we're pursuing.
So there was plenty of pre-game chatter that this could be David Noble's final game in the role. Does this buy him an extra week?
I don't know. I'd be guessing. I feel like the review has only just started, so how could they conclude what needed to be happening if the review is still ongoing?
It only goes for 4 weeks.
Yeah, so I would think you'd make the call at the end of that. Now, this performance would help because you're right. I mean, they played some pretty scintillating footy, but you lose 14 in a row. Not many coaches in history are going to survive a record like that. I did like his confidence, though. You know, he's been around footy for a long time, so for him to say, look, I know what needs to be done and I'm confident in my ability to be able to turn it around. So at least if he does go down, he goes down fighting.
So there were plenty of positives for the Roos, but we do want to highlight Jaden Stevenson because there are a couple of poor efforts. I don't think there's any other way to sugarcoat this.
Yes, this is the start of the last quarter. It goes to ground too easily and he just gives up, really. This is the defensive action where his direct opponent, McCreary, doesn't actually get the footy, but the amount of latitude he's giving his opponent. If you want to play half-back, you've got to defend. And in big moments, crucial ones like that, you've got to stick that tackle and nail the tackle. So to me, he looks like a player who refuses physical contact. And look, there are some players that are braver than others, we know that, but there's a certain level of accepting the physicality of AFL if you put yourself out there, and he was unwilling to do that. And I thought he significantly cost his team and his teammates today. He was subbed out. Who knows if that was a punishment thing or whether there was actually an injury there. But I think he's got 3 years left of that 5-year contract. So they're going to have to try and make it work with Jaden Stevenson. But he was poor and he's really only got himself to blame for that performance today.
He's a long way from the Rising Star winner we saw in his very first year of footy. Time now, though, for our Amy Clangers. It was a little bit thin this week, but I did enjoy this one. The Cats wore their retro Guernsey on Thursday night and you saw their Mark Blitzarves, just the collar not sitting right, and it bugged me from the start of the game, so I'm really glad that Christian Petrarca fixed that for me.
It didn't just bug you, it bugged Christian Petrarca. So he's gone from pushing him in the chest to fixing his collar. What a guy. I
know, it's like if you're a tag dad, you've got to fix it. You can't let someone walk down the street with the tag hanging out the back. We should speak about that game. It was a cracking game on Thursday night, GMHBA Stadium. The Cats toppling the reigning premiers in Melbourne, and Geelong's midfield, it was a dominant performance.
It was, and it was an unheralded midfield up against that. So you're looking at the disposals there in the fourth quarter from the 14 to 28 minute mark, and it was a smashing, really, across the board. So 11 inside 50s to 0, and there's the score. But it was generated from the middle of the ground and around stoppages. Now, we came off a week where we lauded Petrarca and Oliver and Viney for their performances against Adelaide, and rightly so. We're talking about, the best trio, one of all time. So to get Geelong to go there and smash them from scores from stoppage, and then they were always going to have the advantage in the forward line when you look at Hawkins and Cameron, who didn't have a big night, mind you, but if you can match Melbourne around the footy and get the footy in your half, then that's where they do struggle. So they were taken to it physically, and it was such an impressive performance from the Cats.
Some people say you're only as good as your bottom 6 to 8 players, and I feel like this is the area of most improvement and growth for Geelong this year.
No doubt about that. So let's go through some of the names. Atkins had 21, but 9 tackles, 9 clearances. We're seeing Brian Myers, we're seeing Close, and I guess it's a lot of the smaller forwards who play those selfless roles. Holmes is another one here, and he's still a young player, but he's just come on in leaps and bounds. And at one stage, when the game was on the line, I'm seeing Selwood and Dangerfield on the bench, and it's these players like Atkins that have now got the responsibility to do, really tough things, and Stengels comes in as well, and he's made a huge impact. So all of this without Tom Stewart as well, and with Dangerfield and Selwood playing lesser roles, as I said. The other one is Reece Stanley as well, who I feel like has been a much maligned player, but for him to take it up to Gawn and Jackson and at least level the contest was really important. So I think he's had an excellent season, and then Blixarves as well, who's playing an interesting role, but playing it to full effect. So, yeah, full team performance from the Cats.
Does this change your thinking about Geelong and where they sit in the premiership race?
Absolutely. I mean, I've written Geelong off, I reckon, at the start of the year for the last 6 years. And they just
I think we all have.
They blow me out. Tom Lonergan said that Chris Scott's the best coach in the game during the week, and it's hard to argue with that. I know the finals record isn't there recently, but to continually show up and give yourself an opportunity, he's a freak, and I love the way that they've built into the season, take more risks with the footy, speak about doing a bit of a mini pre-season, in-season to keep the fitness levels up, to get Dangerfield right and ready to go, to rest Selwood. They've just made all the right moves this year, and they're in a really good spot.
No, they certainly are. I just want to show some behind-the-goals vision here that we have of Mitch Duncan. He is such an elite user of the ball, but he was just pretty much doing as he pleases, and this would never have happened with the D's last year.
What a role. Well, I mean, is there a better role to play in football than playing across half-back and just floating with not one opponent anywhere near you? Look, this is going to get a set shot outside of 50. He goes from the back half, just walks down, gets a handball receive, and the reason he can do that is because of what a ball user he has been. So in game number 250, Melbourne stood up and gave him a guard of honour at the end. They also gave him a guard of honour during the game. No one wanted to touch him.
The biggest concern from a Demon's point of view has to be their forward line. I still don't think they even know what the perfect mix is without Tom McDonald, who is still 8 to 10 weeks away on their injury list. What is it?
I don't know. They're going to have to come together with a makeshift style setup. Now, Gawn has shown that he can be damaging forward. So I feel like it is going to flip more to Jackson in the ruck and give you that versatility and athleticism in the ruck there, and then Gawn forward. Thought Ben Brown showed some positive signs working to the logos and taking a couple of contested marks there, and he had some good touches. Fritsch has got to be better. He's been out of form this year, as does Cozzy Pickett. So if they can get Fritsch and Cozzy Pickett going as the run into finals happens, it's not all doom and gloom for me. And then you've got Neil Bullen and the other players, Sparrow, that play those team first sort of roles, the pressure players, but it's certainly not functioning like it was in the back half of last year.
On Friday night at the SCG, it was the Sydney Swans who blew the Bulldogs out of the water. The game was effectively over in the first quarter. They kicked the opening 5 goals of the game, and the Swans never really looked back. Yeah,
you could tell that they were furious by the previous week against Essendon, and they had one of those really brutal weeks on the training track, I reckon. A lot of contested sort of stuff, because they just came out, and we all admire and respect the Western Bulldogs' talent in their midfield, but they didn't want to work. They didn't want to push from contest to contest, and Sydney wanted to get their hands and their knees dirty early on in this game, and we speak about how important that midfield battle is, particularly at the SCG. Well, they smashed them, and it was plus 20 disposals, plus 20 contested, 12 inside 50s in favour of them, and plus 5 in tackles, considering they were dominant with the ball. So that's a smashing. Mills laid 16 tackles. Reid laid 13. He's playing in the ruck. He's laid 13 tackles, and shout out to Tom Papley, who had 17 score involvements. You told me that's the most for the year.
Yep, most for the year. Ridiculous. Chad Warner was also ridiculous. Awesome. He's having a terrific season playing in the midfield. So the Dogs are now 8-8, 1 win out of the top 8. It helps that the Tigers lost, but are they done?
Yeah, well, they don't want to defend. So that's the issue when you're looking at how efficient the Swans were. So they've had 15 scoring shots from 22 inside 50s in the first quarter. So largely they don't want to defend. And if their midfield doesn't want to defend, then their lesser lights in their backline are going to be exposed. Williams and Gardner and players like that. And they're so reliant on Aaron Norton. So it's a big story. I mean, they're leading the grand final last year. To go from that to missing the 8 is a big story. And I think the pressure will rightly come on Luke Beveridge in this off-season.
Grand final scars continue to haunt the Bulldogs. We should mention too, Paddy McCartan, 50 games. Such a special moment for him, given 4 years ago we thought his career was done. The #1 draft pick in 2014, and now a crucial cog for the Sydney Swans in the back line.
Just awesome. I mean, he just plays with such creativity and flair, not afraid to leave his man, as you're seeing there. He reads it quicker than anyone. I mean, he's in the All-Australian conversation, and the challenges he's got with his diabetes there, I mean, that's sort of halfway through the third quarter, comes back on and continues to dominate. So Terrific story. I've admired his courage considering the issues he's had with concussion, but continually puts himself in dangerous spots, and him and his brother have been awesome.
Now, we love a role player here on the round so far, and Ryan Clark is one of those. He's been in and out of the side, though, but he did a terrific job on Bailey-Dale, restricting him to just 16 touches, which is his lowest tally for the season. He had the job on St Jack Sinclair a couple of weeks ago as well. Is he now in the best 22?
Bring back the tagger, Nat. That's what we love. That's what we love. I just like that John Longmire disrupts the opposition, like gives you something that you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way St Kilda expected him to go to Sinclair a few weeks ago, and that does disrupt your ball movement. It gets you thinking from the coach's box, and then the same thing with Bailey-Dale. So he's done an awesome job. 16 he kept him to. A lot of those still would have been from kickouts as well, which you get those cheapies. So whether he has a match-up against Freo this week, I'm not sure, but I'd keep him in there because, I mean, it gives his teammates a boost when you see someone sacrifice their game like that.
Let's head over to the Adelaide Oval now, and the Power keeping their faint finals hopes alive with a 55-point win over the Giants. But Kane, surprise, surprise, you asked me for some Connor Rozee love. So here it is. He's our Saturday star thanks to TaylorMade.
Thank you, Nat. And you delivered with this. Yeah, I mean, he's just built since the moment he was put into the midfield in that Carlton game when Port Adelaide were 50 points down and lost by a point. To be able to do this now and to go forward and finish in the front half from the midfield. So he's playing with some freedom from the midfield. I do love his zip and his ability to get in and out of traffic. He laid the 5 tackles tonight, that turnover there and another long bomb. So he just has the potential to be such a match winner for Port Adelaide, and good to see his mate Zach Butters, who handed that one off to him there, and they're just waxing a little bit back together in the midfield. We haven't seen that at all because Butters just hasn't had a good run with it, but yeah, Connor Rozee was awesome tonight with his 4 goals, 24 disposals, 11 score involvements, and rightly deserving of the Saturday star.
Rozee love fest in the Round So Far studios tonight. Let's get to the ladder now. And of course, the Cats on top of the table. Freo move into 3rd on the ladder. The Collingwood in 5th. The Swans, Blues, Tigers to round out the top 8. And this is where it's really tight, isn't it? From 8th down to 12th. But you probably think the 8 is set now.
Probably is, yeah. That's probably what the results mean now. Maybe Richmond vulnerable with those injuries and whether they can get it together or not, albeit they've got a reasonable run. But could be a few upsets tomorrow, I reckon.
Yes, 3 games to go. I fear for the Brisbane Lions because it's been carnage. You know, they've been decimated with health and safety protocols and some injury.
Yep.
The Hawks, well, they've lost their last 5 games at Marvel Stadium. The Crows beat them there in round 19 last year. That could be a danger game for
West
them.
Coast win?
Oh, they could. They're playing some good footy and they're confident.
And they're playing at home. Few injuries for Carlton, albeit they get Jacob Wiedering back. It's a huge boost, but terrific games of footy tomorrow. Looking forward to it.
And you can catch it all on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, of course. That is it for the round so far. Thank you, Kane, for letting me sit in Riley's chair.
I feel like you've done this before.
Maybe
what a professional.
Once or twice. Riley will be back next week. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.